Pascal. You are now rocking with that dude Pascal. We be going wild, Haitian in the building, so original. Got the haters catching feelings. Get your hands up to the ceiling and keep them held high. Cause St. Louis isn't ready. Forget about it, goodbye. Hold on, we just saying hi. Five somebody, rise up. Weekdays, catch us live. Somebody, let's go.
Good afternoon. Good evening and good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Pascal Show. Hope you guys are all doing well out there. Hope this show finds you in good spirits because we need good spirits to keep our minds open for a great, great conversation. We are about to have a very, hopefully, thought-provoking conversation here in just a minute. I'm very honored to have our guests coming on and sharing their knowledge, their information with us, and hearing their side. Some very controversial allegations, claims have been brought out to the public in regards to this case, and we have definitely got to hear a little bit more, because I don't know about you guys, but I got a lot of questions. So we're going to talk about it. All right, so do me a favor. Before we get into everything, hit that like button down below, crush it, make it do what it do. All right. If you're watching on other platforms, please be sure to hit that reaction button down below. And if you are watching on those other platforms, please be sure to crush that follow button on my Facebook, X/Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, you name it. Follow me over there. If you are watching here on YouTube, please crush that subscribe button. Of course, if you want to support the channel, hit that join button down below. Become a member of the family. That would be greatly appreciated. And of course, if you want to support even further, we're having really great conversations as well over on Patreon. Patreon.com/The Pascal Show. It's in the ticker going that way as we speak underneath me down below. Okay? Please go and show some support. That'd be greatly, greatly appreciated. All right, guys. As you guys know, we have been covering this unbelievable, tragic, and horrific, horrifying case of the Gilgo Beach serial killer. Of course, almost a year ago, this man, Rex Heuermann, was arrested in connection to 4 of these victims that the remains were strewn across Gilgo Beach and then some. And now, just about a week or so ago, we had new updates with new names, new victims added into the list. Names like Jessica Taylor and Sandra Castilla. But as of recently, just last week, we had a very interesting press conference that just dropped bombshells and caused a lot of stir on the internet, on social media. A lot of controversy because of this man right here, Attorney John Ray. He is the lawyer representing the Shannan Gilbert family. Of course, I do want to make this abundantly clear. Shannon Gilbert still has not been connected to Rex Heuermann or this alleged Gilgo Beach serial killer. I want to make that abundantly clear. But there were certain things that John said in this press conference, alluding to the fact that Rex Heuermann was not living a double life. Now, all of us had the dun, dun, dun moment for sure. Even myself, even I was clutching my pearls at this very moment. But as we heard the information, of course, I had questions. How did they come to this conclusion? Are these allegations rock solid, concrete enough to show proof positive that this family knew exactly, or at least the daughter knew exactly what Rex was doing at a particular time during these unalivings or not? Again, like I said, I have a lot of questions. We're going to talk about all of them. And so I'm very honored to have attorney John Ray on the show with us today. John.
Hey, Pascal.
How you doing, my brother? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I appreciate you being here. It is an honor to have you on here. I know you have been doing so much in regards to the Gilgo Beach murders. and of course, trying to bring justice and get justice for Shannan Gilbert. So I do appreciate you being here and being a part of this conversation. Because let's be real, John. I mean, last Thursday or Friday, I don't remember what day it was exactly. You dropped some serious bombshells that shook a lot of people to the core. So real quick though, before we get into that, your thoughts on the reaction, the guttural reaction that people have had after this particular press conference.
Well, I guess you could divide a reaction into two parts at least. And one is the public reaction, which is the media and the major media, newspapers and the like, and the popular reaction, which is the people themselves who speak often through the internet. Not always, but sometimes you will see that. And so the reaction to your show and to certain other shows that are on podcasts that are nationwide, and to Court TV, where I appeared and also discussed all of this, the reaction to the press conference itself from people on various media was overwhelmingly favorable to what I had pointed out and to my posture in this case. There was a distinct minority of people who really disliked intensely what I had to say and disliked me equally as badly because of that. But if you step back, forget who's reacting to what, and just think about this. What's common sense here? Apply common sense, apply experience and your knowledge. And you have to say to yourself, whether John Ray said anything at all, and whether what he said was somewhat true or completely true, notwithstanding, regardless, factually, this is a young woman, 27 years old, full adult, who grows up in a household, a tiny 1,343 square foot house with a monster killer who apparently committed some of his bad acts downstairs in his own basement, who had literally hundreds of sex workers visiting him over the course of years, many of them at that household, of which there is no doubt. When the wife was home, often when the wife was home, and you have the resultant murders, and then you find that there's a hair of the daughter on the skull, the outer skull of Miss Costello, and you find two of the mother's hairs as well. When you put all those facts together without knowing anything more, and seeing the house yourself on TV, how is it surprising to you at all? How could it possibly be considered surprising, shocking, to find out that the daughter may have other things going on, which would put her in the circle of suspicion along with her parents in these things? It's actually surprising, shocking, perhaps even absurd, that the people who are full of negative energy about this say, how dare you attack the virtue of this girl, and how dare you go and say these things, and she's a victim, and how dare you do that? Actually, they're the ones that seem absurd in their reaction that way against the evidence that we already know, forgetting what I've ever said. So that's my initial take on it.
And I totally understand where you're coming from, John, because I mean, obviously, you've been working closely on this case, on these cases, if you will, and I'm sure there's going to be more cases being pinned or connected to this monster, this alleged monster, of course, here very, very soon. But I know that there's a lot of people out here that will automatically say, well, wait a second, how do we know that that is actually her account? Could it be him actually using her name as an account so that, things get off, maybe get off the beaten path, or just hide behind another name and use his daughter's name? You see what I'm saying? What do you say to those kinds of reactions? Because that piece, I understand that part too, because instantly I go, well, So she Googled some stuff. She painted some paintings that were gruesome. She posted some photos that are gothic and graphic and dark. That doesn't automatically mean an admission of guilt. So what say you on that, John?
I never said, nor would I, nor should anyone say that anything she looked at on the computer is an admission of guilt. That's just not the position that we took, and nor do we take. The fact that she looked at things is some suggestion, and a pretty strong suggestion in modern times, when with the computer you have all kinds of choices to make to look at things, and you pick particular things. Her choices that she made are highly suspect in light of the circumstances in which she made those choices. She made those choices going back years while her father was committing the very acts that she was looking at. And those are not ordinary choices that she made. The people who make the argument, oh, well, goth people look at this sort of thing, and what's wrong with that? Well, take a look at it yourself. And you tell me that any rational person looking at that would not be disgusted and horrified. I don't care whether you call them goths or whatever you want to call them. That's sick. That's morally sick. It's degenerate to be involving yourself in those kinds of pictures. And you don't have to have made them yourself. Don't we know people, like I said at the press conference, with their associations, by the books they read, by the movies they go to, by the things that they look at, by the way they dress, and so forth. Just like you know me, just like I know you. That's how we come to know one another. We make judgments accordingly. And how could you avoid making a judgment, at least, that there's something really wrong with what this girl was looking at over the course of time? And the point that her father may have done it, and people say, well, it could be this. There's a possibility it could be this or that, and not her herself. First of all, her lawyer went on the internet, and himself, he went on court TV, and he tacitly admitted that those were her items that she was looking at. He never denied it. He never said her father looked at that. She's not in any trouble so far. So there's nothing to restrain the lawyer from talking to his client, coming to the public and saying, no, her father was looking at that. She gave up her computer at that time. He never did any of that. And he didn't for the very good reason that she was looking at that stuff. And to say, well, there could be a possibility that's not true. Of course, there could be a possibility that's not true. And it's possible, if you really stretch your mind, that some foreign agent flew in at night and occupied her room and looked at it as well. Anything's possible if you want to make that argument. But the father was looking at his own porn, which matches and his own, not only porn, but horrifying porn, which matches what she was looking at the same time and about the same time. So now, I just don't buy it that there's no reasonable likelihood that this is the father's work and not the daughter's operation.
No, I totally I see your where you're coming from, and but I'm kind of curious as to how do you know for a fact that they are looking at the same stuff around the same time? Because could it just be because I don't know the household, I don't know how they do these things. Is this all just from work? Doing your own technological witchcraft on their individual phones? Is this on one singular computer? Because you got to remember, I mean, it could just be him just searching himself, just on different. You see what I'm saying? Could it just be him doing those searches himself? That's what I'm basically trying to ask here.
Except that anything could be, like I said, but the likelihood of that is very small, and that's because of the circumstances that we
right.
When my technician went into the thing she was looking at, we were able to tell by various means. She was able to tell that this was extremely likely to have been her own computer. Not being used by anybody but her. And there were connections to other viewings that she was making and statements she was making that make that likely. So, okay. We don't operate in the world of when we're not in trial in court, and I'm not on trial and I'm not in court. I'm here advocating and working and investigating. When you're on that level of investigation, even the police don't say, well, we have to investigate and we only accept evidence if it's beyond a reasonable doubt. That's not required. And I don't insist that what the evidence I have is evidence beyond a reasonable doubt. I don't have to insist on that. That's up to the district attorney when they decide to prosecute to follow up on and make sure that their evidence is tight like that. But that's not my job.
I see.
But I do see, my job is to put before you, this is what we have. This is what we know. You decide what it means. That's pretty much what I said.
Okay. So then my next question is, of course, because you say this is circumstantial evidence, right?
Yeah.
So for all of us that are, for us laymen's out there, can you just kind of break down the meaning of circumstantial evidence for us? I know that's very law 101, but I just kind of want to drill that, send that home to the people listening in the nosebleed seats.
Yeah. Well, circumstantial evidence is, maybe I could give you an example first, and that's the easy way. I have a knife in my hand and there's blood on it and you're laying there dead next to me. I think we can say that's pretty direct evidence, especially if the blood matches up on the knife with the blood on your body. That's direct evidence that I killed you. Okay. But let's say that the knife is laying in the corner. It's not all that clear, that the testing isn't clear about whose blood is on the knife, but you're dead and I'm in the room alone and I've got blood all over me. That's circumstantial evidence. Circumstantial evidence, in other words, can be hearsay. It can be seemingly unrelated incidents. It can be words spoken out of court. It can be all manner of things, not counting in direct evidence. And circumstantial evidence is allowed in court to be entered into evidence under various circumstances. And likewise, a conviction can be had based solely on circumstantial evidence. And as I said at my my press conference, quoting Randolph of Roanoke in a famous trial dealing with Elbridge Gerry back in the days of our founding fathers, he said, sometimes circumstantial evidence can be strong, as when you find a trout in the milk. And that's kind of what circumstantial evidence is. So it can be very powerful. And it can't be disregarded.
I see. So when it comes to then, what made you go towards Victoria in particular? The reason why I ask is, I'm going to be honest. A quick little story, John, if you have the time.
Sure.
So we were getting ready for the live, right, for the press conference, and even myself, I'm going, okay. I'm thinking that we're hearing about he didn't live a double life. Family may have known. Instantly, I'm thinking it may be the wife, right? Because, she's an adult. She's married to him, so on and so forth. But then you dropped Victoria's name. And I was shook. I was thrown off. I was like, wait, the daughter? Wait a second. So I'm wondering what breadcrumbs led you down the rabbit hole in this investigation, looking at Victoria in particular, and not anybody else in the family, so far at least.
We've looked at everybody in the family, and maybe not equally in terms of the time we've put in, but we've looked into each one so far. And that search that we've done is broad, and it's not only on the internet, but regardless, we did. But there were things that struck me immediately in the case that told me that something's wrong, that nobody seems to have given any focus whatsoever to the daughter, who's 27 years old. She's not a baby, but she painted herself as a sort of quasi-baby. She painted herself very cleverly as an innocent child. And how did she do that? And I noticed it right away when I saw it on the screen for the first time. When she and her mother and brother were in the front yard at her home, she appears in these knit clothings that cover everything, including her hands. Mm-hmm. And it's a full length, very staid looking dress, and a little tiny bun on her hair, no makeup. And she looked, and the most interesting thing was she had a school bag, a Scandinavian made school bag over her chest, on straps and hanging over her chest in the front. And the idea was, the portrayal was, this is a schoolgirl. And so she appeared. And so, of course, I even was affected by that. I thought, oh, there she is now. You're showing her now. I thought, oh, why? She's looks pretty innocent. Until I learned that she was 27 years old. But that bothered me to see that. Then when she appeared again outside, I believe it was outside of her home, the media took a picture of her. And this is right after I believe it's right after the second set of people where he was indicted for, of the victims. And she's walking out and she's got on a top, but it exposed a jacket of some kind. Underneath it is a t-shirt, and it's a human skeleton on her t-shirt. And I thought, my God, what a poor choice of clothing under these circumstances, especially when the bodies were chopped up. So it bothered me a little bit. I didn't, it kind of left a thought, and I started putting together all these other inconsistencies. You don't hear her. She's 27. She can speak for herself. She never speaks for herself. She gets a lawyer right away. Innocent people who are just mere witnesses who have no guilt whatsoever, they don't need to run out and get lawyers. She got a lawyer. Secondly, she got herself a GoFundMe set up through her lawyers right away. The very first thing she did. Thirdly, she went and got a contract. She went out through her lawyer, Matev, and they hunted down a contract that was worth over $1 million with Peacock. This is not an ordinary girl, right? And so we started looking on the internet. There were other things that triggered it as well. The fact that she never once spoke and said how terrible it was what was done to these victims by whoever did it, if she didn't want to believe it was her father. And never said a word, when it's so obviously an issue that you would have expected some expression of sympathy. There was none whatsoever. And then she's showing up at court. What's going on here? Something's wrong. So we started looking deep into and I had Lena, my technician assistant, who's fabulous at this, and she's a great person. She started diving deeper into the internet and looking at what this girl was looking at. And then the first thing we found was the real Victoria wasn't the little schoolgirl with the school bag. The real Victoria was a goth, and showing her picture in a very provocative way. And it's so great a difference between the two. I couldn't believe. I had to get Lena to really dig to make sure that was her. That was Victoria in that second picture. So the real Victoria starts to pop up. And once that happened, now you saw what we exposed.
No, I understand.
Deeply wrong here with this situation. How come these people who were negative in their reaction to me, what's wrong with them? Even though there's a whole body of those people saying, what's wrong with looking at these pictures? They're, after all, only pictures. What's wrong with my kids do this all the time? I did it when I grew up, say these people. Well, excuse me, but there's a grain of trouble in that all the way back to when you grew up as a teenager. And if that's what you were doing, you shouldn't have been doing. Sorry, go ahead.
No, so it's okay. You said some things. I just want to hop in there. Well, first off, I do want to say, I just playing devil's advocate, sitting on the other side of the fence for a second. I mean, obviously, getting a lawyer does not mean an admission of guilt, especially with the height of what Rex Heuermann's being looked at for, what he's being accused of doing. I wouldn't be surprised if every single person, brother, sister, any family member would have lawyered up with the quickness, especially if they knew what the connection was, right? Then the other thing
I disagree. Why get a lawyer when the district attorney has said you're not a part of it? There's no reason to get a lawyer. You get lawyers to protect you from what? From legal troubles. What legal trouble did this girl have? None. Or at least we know that. Did she think that? Maybe she thought there's more problems for her than first met the eye. Maybe she recognizes what I've already been able to discover.
True.
Knew that right away.
True. The goth look, obviously, how she's presenting herself on camera right now in comparison to what she used to dress like, also doesn't automatically mean an admission of guilt. And it also seems as if she's playing. I mean, this is just my own theory. Okay. This is just speculation here. Okay. I have no proof, but to me, it seems like they're trying to soften her up for the camera, if that makes any sense, so she doesn't come off so harsh. Because I guess the goth look could make people automatically lean on the side of, oh, she may be influenced, or she may be a part of it, or something of that sort. You see what I'm saying? Oh, I see some sort of dark energy around her as well, or something of that sort, right? So when I see something like that, I instantly see, okay, maybe she's trying to lighten her. They're trying to change her look a little bit so that it's a little bit softer on the court of public opinion's eyes, right? Also, they're getting paid $1 million for this documentary. I'm sure they're softening her up for the documentary so she's not so off-putting, if that makes any sense as well.
It's
What
possible.
say you on that?
It's possible, but consider this: why would a lawyer, if what you're saying is correct, that the lawyer influenced the way she dressed, why would a lawyer want to make her dress in a fake way to deceive the public as to the way she normally looks? There's no particular good reason for that, and except a bad one. And consider that she also, we found on the internet, she went on the internet and spoke herself on the internet, and she had plenty of pictures on the internet that she looked at, that were hers, and there were plenty of pictures of that she made.
So let's talk about
what? She wiped them all out. She erased them all.
Exactly.
And why would you do that if you're not trying to hide something? You want to use the word not guilt. I don't care. You're trying to hide something when you do that. And that's what it appears she did. But listen to, go ahead.
Sorry. So it's really quick about the social media posts, because I understand that those things were deleted. Are we sure for a fact those posts were actually made by her and they were actually deleted, or you know what I mean? Are we sure about that?
As much as I know from my technician, yes, we are.
Okay.
She deleted. So did her mother, by the way.
She deleted things too.
Yeah, their social media accounts. They deleted. Both of them did.
Okay.
Strange coincidence, hey? Here, listen to this. This is the Victoria who we're supposed to be considering a victim. Mind you, when I say victim, Victoria is not chopped up. She's not dead.
Mm-hmm.
She wasn't tortured. She didn't suffer anything of that nature that we can see in anything that we know about her whatsoever. But the real victims did. And to paint this girl as if she's equal to the real victims is itself another absurdity. She deserves, I think Victoria does deserve the potentiality of having mercy for what has happened. And she deserves to be treated in the end, if she tells the truth and does what she should do in this case. She deserves to be treated with some degree of mercy, but not the same thing as saying that she is a victim. Here's what the victim Victoria said. I use the word facetiously on the internet. My dad just arrested. This is on July 14th of last year when he was arraigned. My dad just arrested for bullshit. And I want to get my mind off it. So rate my draws. Her draws being her drawings.
Mm-hmm.
All right. That's the Victoria speaking. You're getting an insight to her personality from her own words, scant as they are. The victims' lives were bullshit. Arrested for bullshit. Bullshit. That's how she perceives it. And so what should I concentrate on? Not the fact that this whole thing is horrifying beyond endurance and that it occurred possibly in my house with my family. Now, let's take a look, and why don't you rate my drawings and see how they are? This is a person with little or no conscience whatsoever. And when you're dealing with a sociopath, the one thing that characterizes them one after another is no conscience. They don't have a conscience. The expression by this woman of that indicates she has no conscience. But she signs herself on the internet. And this is how she signs herself. Lisk Daughter, L-I-S-K Daughter. L-I-S-K, as we all know, stands for Long Island Serial Killer, not alleged killer. She's proud that she is the daughter of the man accused of killing. And she's making a tacit admission that he is the killer when she signs that way, without any problem whatsoever. This is someone without a conscience.
And you were able to take that Lisk Daughter, right? That account, and trace it all the way back to Victoria successfully?
Yes, my staff did that. So it's not, it could it be a troll? I suppose, like I said, maybe there's, who knows? There may be extraterrestrial beings who fly in at night and make these things. Anything's possible. But the chances are that she did it are overwhelmingly likely. And Mr. Matev, when he was on the Court TV, attacking me and explaining what she did in this case, when that was read out loud, he did not deny it. He tried to explain it instead. So, go figure, as they say.
I see. What would you say to people that are looking at this information and saying that it's a bit of a reach, or it's a shot in the dark, or that this could just be a person faking as Victoria? What are your thoughts on that?
This is not Victoria faking. This is Victoria. The evidence of that is pretty strong and clear, especially the volume of activity that we have regarding Victoria and what she was looking at on the internet. Take a look at those pictures. They're not, people say, well, they're goth. Go ahead, be a goth. Be whatever you want, but that's not the issue. The issue is what she was looking at in relation to who her father was. And it's stunning. The horror of these things, and not only what she was looking at, but what she was reading. Some of the quotes I read from the postings that were there that she was reading, I didn't say she made any of these, but she was reading them, are beyond belief. They're worse than even the pictures. They're talking about having sex with the holes that you cut in a human body, and then use that to have intercourse. That's the kind of stuff she's reading about. And she's reading about and looking at cannibalism. It's there. I can't help it that it's there. It's there. I don't mean that she's one. I didn't say that. And, there's an awful lot of misquoting of what I said by the negatives out there who are pounding the beat, trying to take down what I've said and destroy it. And they're misrepresenting what I said. I say she should be, don't you think she should be, under any circumstances, under these circumstances in particular, a suspect within the circle of suspicion? And I know she was in kindergarten when the first murder that we've identified occurred. So she couldn't have done that. Of course not. We know that. That's not my point. I've never said she committed these killings. But her family has involved her in it somehow, it appears, from this evidence. And that needs to be strongly looked at. At what point does she, growing up, like we all do in our lives, separate from your parents mentally, psychologically, physically, depending, and say, wait a minute, I have my own life. I make my own judgments. If we didn't perceive human life that way, that we all make our own judgments and we're responsible for them at a certain point in our lives, why then nobody would ever be guilty of anything. We'd have to trace this all the way back to Adam and Eve, and they would be the only ones guilty. Yeah, we don't do that. So in essence, she should have made some decision about this a long time ago. Is she possibly a victim of Stockholm syndrome? Yes, possibly. I can imagine that's in this. But so there's still, excuse me.
I mean,
things you cannot deny that these things existed.
I mean, there's still, possibilities of Stockholm for sure, being groomed, being influenced in some sort of way. If the allegations, if the things that you guys have presented out here are 110%, solid, of course, that can connect to her, to this. But that's the thing. Does this connect her to any of the crimes that were allegedly committed by Rex Heuermann?
Only circumstantially are they connected, and I've never said otherwise, that these pieces of evidence that we found are connected. If they were directly connected and you could prove it, why, that would be a slam dunk, wouldn't it? And we wouldn't be having this discussion. I wouldn't be here. But these are circumstantial. And in investigative work, most of what you get is circumstantial.
I see. So how's the investigation for Shannon Gilbert going right now?
It's going full force. We're not giving up anything on that. And I know you had said that there was nothing connecting Shannon Gilbert and Rex Heuermann, and we brought an action against Dr. Hackett for being responsible civilly for her death. That's still going, and we're going full force on that. But I think perhaps what you mean is that the police have not found any further connections, but we have. And I've produced one of those connections to the police, to Commissioner Rodney Harrison, and he got himself involved when he was police commissioner of Suffolk County with me on that. And that is a taxi cab driver who has no skin in the game, wanted to remain anonymous, and has no desire for fame or glory or attention or money, is not signing book contracts like Mr. Matev and the like they have done, or contracts with Peacock and so on. None of that. She came forward and she told me a story. So I had her meet with Rodney and myself, and for almost 2 hours we vetted her, questioned her, and found her to be credible. And she said that Shannon Gilbert was in the Sayville Motor Lodge, a motel where sex workers were predominant. She was there with Heuermann. And so there is a direct connection if you believe her. There's also certain, very circumstantially broad issues that are out there. For example, when Shannon is first heard on the 911 tapes, Shannon says, "Someone is after me. Somebody's after me." Somebody's stalking her. Heuermann's a stalker. Heuermann's a hunter. I predicted that there was a hunter involved in this case long before we heard of Heuermann. And sure enough, there we have it now. We know he's an avid hunter. And he's also a stalker, which is part of his hunting, and he likes to play little games with people. How do I know that? I have other eyewitnesses, who have come to me and have given me statements of their experience with Heuermann, where he teased them and he tried to trick them, and he did these kinds of things in stalking them, and they managed to live to tell the tale. So they exist. This is not out of the air.
Mm-hmm.
We also have that Heuermann's belongings, when they were seized by the police the first round in July last year, some of them were, quote, survivalist gear, survivalist equipment. Now, survivalist people go in the woods. They think the nuclear age is coming and it's going to blow up everybody, and they want to be able to survive. And they build huts and they learn how to live off the land, and they like to be in forests and marshes and doing all of this. Yeah, they found in the inventory of his things that he had. They found that those items, survivalist items. And Dr. Peter Hackett, the man involved in the case with Shannon, he ran a company called Survivalist Dynamics, and he testified to that under oath. And he ran it with a fellow who was allegedly a merchant marine, a graduate who worked on cruise ships as a captain. Excuse me. And he ran this business, and he testified to it. So the Rex Heuermann lives about, as the crow flies, about a 10-minute trip from Peter Hackett's home from Oak Beach. as the crow flies, maybe 20 minutes if you drive. And the fact that they're both involved in that, when you know how things are on the internet today, and you recognize that Rex Heuermann was a real joiner of groups and so forth in that regard, he was always joining, a very gregarious man, joining hunt clubs and the like. There's a reasonable chance that somehow this survivalist business, connects them. Don't know that yet. We have to look further. Circumstantial evidence.
Wow.
So there are other things. I won't mention them because some of them we're looking at, but we're actively involved in that. And we think the police have made a grave, long-standing error in coming to the conclusion that she died by some unknown cause.
I mean, she is one of the main reasons why everyone else was found, right? I mean, she is the start of it all. And I'm hoping that, I don't know, maybe she'll be the one that closes it. Maybe I don't know. There's something about her case that still tells me, to me, it feels that Rex has something to do with this, and I don't think he did it alone. I will say that too. That's just my theory, of course. But hopefully, him or others that were involved will be brought to justice on that for sure.
Well, for sure. We're gathering more evidence now. It's starting to grow of the possibility, only the possibility that there are others involved in these things that happened. And it's not just in New York, but it's in, I have witnesses from Virginia, Philadelphia, upstate New York, Manhattan. I'm missing New Jersey.
Yeah.
All who were also harassed by or stalked by Heuermann and survived. So it's a broader. So if he's in these other states, and there are a lot of unsolved murders that are similar to his, like the girl in Illinois who came from Las Vegas, who was originally from Suffolk County, Long Island, the sex worker, and who was chopped up just like these girls were chopped up in the same way with the legs removed. There are going to be other people that he's killed in other places, undoubtedly, which is going to emerge sooner or later.
I mean, he
may not be alone. He may not be alone.
I keep thinking that maybe let's talk about that for a second. Actually, yeah, let's talk about that for a second. I do have another question pertaining to the family, but I'm gonna use that for later.
Okay.
But your theories revolving around all of these murders, do you think Rex Heuermann did all of this himself, or do you believe that there is maybe a ring, a ring of serial killers or something of that sort? Or what are your thoughts on all of this? I mean, it has been decades, so he's had plenty of time to do a lot of damage out here undetected. So all these people's lives that could be claimed by him. But what are your thoughts on that? Do you think he operated alone?
Well, my thoughts are mixed. I'm not certain, and that's because I don't subscribe to the idea that he did them alone automatically, and I am not sure that who he worked with, if at all, otherwise. But I do know certain evidence is growing, and don't take them in any particular order, but if you look at the book, the Huddleston book, Detective Jack Huddleston, the crime scenes book that he did with all these pictures of people chopped up in California, sex workers whose bodies were chopped up, that was on the kitchen table when the only one home when the police came in was Victoria. That book was out. That book was there, and you can. I gave you pictures of that with my package. You'll see the horrifying things that whoever was reading that book, they were looking at. But more importantly, that book became a cultish favorite for various cults, Satanist cults and the like, because of the horror in it. So much so that Anton LaVey, who was the head of the Church of Satan in America, in 1989, 1992, and 1993, they made a movie regarding the book. I forget, there's a word that's used for that kind of movie, but Mondo. It's a Mondo movie, and they made a Mondo movie out of this horror, this filth. And so these cults, they got a hold of this book. It's very hard to get. They had them, and the Heuermann family had them. Why? Why was that in an architect's home?
Hmm.
Why was that in a home where a girl who works in an architect's firm? Why is that book there? Is that just a hobby? These people who say, well, this is just looking at pictures. Mr. Matev said it's free. There's nothing criminal about reading a book. That was his response to that. Let me tell you, and I'll say it directly, you people are sick. There's something deeply wrong with you and sick if you think that's okay.
Hmm.
All right. But that book was there. Now that suggests if that's part of a group, favorite, why does she have that? If you look at the mother's arm in the picture that they took when she's sitting on the bench, I believe, at her house, there's a red band with a little evil eye on it. And that's a Kabbalah band that cultish groups favor. They wear them. They're into the Kabbalah, and they're into that particular band that's mentioned in the Old Testament. She's wearing one. That indicates group connection, group behavior. There are other connections like that we're having more and more. We're seeing with other groups, which I won't go into now because it's in the preliminary stages. But it's starting to look more and more like that. Do the police want to look at that? That's their choice. They have to make a choice about that, I suppose. But we've made our choice. We're looking at that. We're looking into more and more in that field, in that, if you take when we had the lady come forward, the witness who seemed very credible when we interviewed her and continued to interview her. And when I had her interviewed with the police for 2 hours, I met with the detectives from Suffolk County. She was the one that's in the car with Karen Vergata, and she's going to meet up with Rex and his wife at their house in Massapequa Park so that they can have a swinger session along with this girl who was a sex worker in the backseat of the car. And if what she's saying is true, she says that they leave, she and her boyfriend, the detective, they leave from the house in a different car than they came in, which means that he would have known Heuermann before that, or both of them, both Heuermanns, before that occurred, before that incident occurred, which means that there would be a group involved. If her story pans out, and it sure does look like it's panning out. Wow. So there are other evidences, as you can just tell by the way I'm describing it, that I know about, and I just don't have them ready at hand to tell you about, or maybe I don't want to yet.
No, it's okay. It's okay. I mean, I understand there's a lot of things that you guys are working on that you need to keep, kind of, off to the side because you're still working on things. It's still an ongoing investigation. And of course, you don't want to let everybody know if there's other monsters that could be connected to this situation, to any of these people's lives. You don't want to let them know that you're hot on their trail, right? So I get that.
And I also don't want the negatives out there. That I call them negatives, the people who are naysaying everything I say and do, and can't help but express that they despise me for reasons I can't. I wear kind of funny hats. I know that, so they have a reason for that. But truly, they do, and I don't want to feed their fire either. You take, for example, I mean, at one point we said with the Shannon Gilbert situation that Shannon had a hole in the hyoid bone, which is a U-shaped bone, right in the base of the bone. There was a hole, and we measured the size of the hole. It went right through. It wasn't supposed to be there, that hole. So we tried to figure out what it was, where it came from. We couldn't, but it was very unusual that there was this unnatural hole. So we also found arrowheads laying around in the back in the marsh that were around behind Peter Hackett's home. So somebody suggested, why don't you see if the arrows measure the same size as the hole? There are arrows that actually are that big that could fit the hole. But I never said that she was killed with an arrow or shot by a bow and into her neck, into her hyoid bone. I said only that we studied that. It's, that's a possibility. We don't know. But they took that and turned that into the absurdity that I said absolutely certain that this happened. I never said that, and I never will.
Yeah. No,
But
I
I
understand.
don't want to feed those fools, and that's what we're doing when we sometimes reveal evidence. So
Yeah, no, and I understand that. Sometimes in this realm, in the social media realm, you give them an inch, they take 16 miles, right?
right,
You
and they
give them
do
an
it on the
inch,
internet.
or yeah,
They're internet trolls. They sit there, and the sum and substance of their great work on this is they sit in front of an internet and they type things, and they exchange words back and forth for the public to read, and they've done nothing. I put in about 50,000 hours of work on this case. I even got the burial site for Shannon. I was able to arrange that for free for
mm,
the family. I was able to arrange the autopsy for free for the family. There were many things I did besides. I can't even tell you the out-of-pocket expenses for the number of transcripts and such that I've taken, and the amount of work I've actually done in the street, on the field, in the field, and so on. These little trolls, they're nothing but just troublemakers that sit there and make up things as they go along. And I just wanted to say that because I wanted to rebut it. And if it gives me a little peace of mind to have done so. Thank you for letting me do that.
no, of course, of course. I mean, but that's the thing. We want to understand all sides of this case, understand everything. I mean, let me be real. I've said it before, but I'll say it again. You dropped that information. It shook me to the core. It shocked me. I was surprised. Well, regardless, I was surprised about a press conference even happening again. And they were saying that he didn't live a double life. That obviously took my attention straight over to that press conference. And I was like, what does this all mean? Could it be this person, that person, so on and so forth? So, and I think that's what how everybody else is reacting. And of course, understandably, you guys have been doing your due diligence. You guys have been doing your investigation and doing a deep dive into this. And you said 50,000 plus hours. That's a long time of putting in some time into this case. And so, of course, I appreciate you coming on here and, explaining a little bit more, because I mean the presentation and all that you guys gave us at that press conference was a lot to swallow. Okay,
Sure.
a lot to take in, a lot to consume. But I appreciate you breaking those things down now with us. Again, you did kind of cover the question I had that I was going to ask you about the book, the coffee table book that was found in the kitchen, and Victoria was in the kitchen. Now, I am kind of curious about the house and how it was left when they did the first search, like after the first search. Because if I'm correct, the book, for example, this picture book, this coffee table book that is very graphic. And I also want to say this too before I forget. The packets that you sent me, my Lord, I had to scroll through some of those things. I had to whip through some of those things really fast because some of the images are extremely graphic and extremely disturbing. Didn't think I was going to be opening up to that, but very interesting information that's being alleged to be connected to Victoria. Now, do we know that the place was in disarray before like after the first search? Because if I'm correct, you were able to obtain the coffee table book at the second search, correct?
Yeah, the second search is when I learned about it.
So is there any possibility? And of course, I'm just playing both sides of the fence as best as I can here, okay? Is there a possibility that maybe during the first search, police, law enforcement just happened to discard that book on a table somewhere, and it just may have just been left there on that kitchen table? Maybe it was in a bookshelf somewhere. You see what I'm saying? You see what I'm saying? I'm just wondering how much disarray was the place, because I feel like everything was just flipped upside down. Does that make sense?
It does.
So I'm curious about like how it was seen picking up this book, this very graphic book, on a kitchen table. You see what I'm saying?
Yes, I do. But consider this.
Sure.
I wasn't there when they found it, so I don't know the details. But just in general, if that book was, say, stuck away somewhere in amongst books that they had in a pile of them or what have you, something like that, I think your point would be better taken. But sitting on a kitchen table, kitchen tables are typically used. They're not just, equipment that's laying in storage somewhere. And so it had to have been used. And remember, the raid that they made the first time was months before the second time. So you mean to say the kitchen, that book was happened to be tossed there, inventoried, brought back, left there, and then stayed all those months in the same spot in the kitchen on the table, and nobody noticed it? That doesn't seem very likely, does it?
Yeah,
And
no.
then, and then you consider that also the it's not a coffee table book. It's just a book with foul, horrible pictures, one after the other. That's all it is, with some sarcastic comments by the detective who took this book. But it's not an ordinary book either. It's a book with this cultish significance. So if it's sitting on, I mean, if the house was terribly messy, it's extremely likely that that's going to be in the spot where it was under those circumstances. And remember, not something else about the house. Even though the police left it a wreck when they left the first time, the neighbors and friends I don't know if their friends have any friends at all, but their neighbors came in and actually worked diligently to put everything back in place, to take care of everything. So that place was put back when the neighbors came in at no cost to the Ellerups. Remember, the Ellerups also, including the daughter, they set up a GoFundMe and raised over $50,000 for themselves right away. That's the kind of people we're dealing with here. So they that book was some kind of a coincidence. That's extremely unlikely.
Another question. Is it possible? You said something about Stockholm syndrome, so I want to kind of tap in on that for a second. And again, very honored to have you here on the show, and just talking this out with us and spending your time with us. I know your time is valued very highly, I'm sure. So it's an honor to have you here.
Thank you.
But when it comes to the Stockholm syndrome part, right? Have we thought about that side? That there could be a possibility of grooming, of influence, of maybe within this household, this is the language, this is the understanding, this is the culture, and that's normal inside that home. Can we talk about that? Can we tap in on that a little bit? Because again, in my mind, that doesn't automatically mean an admission of guilt. No. That doesn't mean a connection, right, to possible other murders and whatnot. It just shows that there could be a language, could be a culture implemented within that family's household. What are your thoughts on that? Well,
with your point, I agree. And the possibility certainly exists of that. I don't know if it fits the Stockholm syndrome per se, but overall, the grooming of a child can be done by the sex offenders all the time, using the same techniques as are used in the Stockholm syndrome, with the exception that in grooming, the child is not abused at first and not tortured at first. The child is lured in. That could be the way this happened in the house. We don't know. But I wouldn't do this. I wouldn't say, well, it's very likely the Stockholm syndrome and write it off. Say, well, therefore that's a way of assigning guilt elsewhere, to the parents and not the child. Don't let that point dominate your mind, because that could have happened. It probably did happen. Something along those lines of grooming, Stockholm syndrome work, but weigh it against that she continued to work with her father. She continued to do what you saw on the internet after her father was jailed and so on. There's two sides of that even. I'm not sure which is the right one, maybe a little bit of both, who knows? But, don't just erase guilt automatically before you really study and investigate this case. And I'd often say that to the police as well, because there's a lot of evidence going both ways. And I feel sorry for the child when she was a child, as to what very likely was done to bring her into this culture that we're looking at. But
I see. Your thoughts on coincidence? Coincidence. especially in cases that you've covered, do you believe in coincidence or not?
Yes, of course, coincidence occurs. If you try to play God and say nothing is a coincidence, then you're godlike, and I'm not godlike. I don't know that you can say that. If God made everything and controls everything, well, then nothing's a coincidence. But after I say that, I don't need to be God anymore. After saying that, and say, wait a minute, let's be human. And there are plenty of things that happen we can't explain, and they're just happenstances. So sure, there's plenty of coincidences. In this case, in the Shannon Gilbert case, in all the related cases so far, the coincidences are overwhelming. I've never encountered the number of coincidences in my life, individually or collectively. I took all the cases I've ever had. They don't match the number of coincidences that we have in this case. Mm-hmm. I mean, you and I, you could bring me back and say, well, let's do an 8-hour show, and I could lay out the coincidences. That's what it would take. But they're amazing. Here's a quick one, and just to give you an idea.
Sure.
People from California called me and asked me several years ago to help them out in a case in Buffalo where a girl, Amanda Winkowski, was found, pretty girl, found naked, upside down, frozen in a garbage can with the top on it in January in 2009, I believe it was. And the mother was trying to say that it was not an accident. The medical examiner found it to be an accident because she was a heroin addict and she was a sex worker. And so I stepped into the case to attempt to get the ruling of the medical examiner reversed so that the police would give a second look to this case. I did that pro bono as well, by the way, like I'm doing all this, including today, pro bono. And so I flew up there and I got involved and I brought the case into the court. The court said the statute of limitations ran out, too late, you can't do it. I appealed it. I went to Rochester to the 4th Department and argued the appeal, did the appeal and argued it, and we lost again on statute of limitations grounds. But the mother of Amanda, Leslie, who I formed a friendship with in doing this work for her, one day we were talking, and I said, did you know that I'm involved in a Long Island serial killer case? She did not know that. If you think all the world is watching this, that they're not. There's a lot of people that know nothing about it. Mm-hmm. And so I told her, I said, yeah, I'm involved in that. And I said, by the way, there's a girl from Buffalo, Melissa Bartholomew, from Lockport in Buffalo, that was one of the girls found murdered. And she paused. My goodness. She said, my goodness, I am a friend of Melissa Bartholomew's mother. And Melissa Bartholomew and Amanda worked together as sex workers, and they traveled to Hollywood together to be trained to serve as Hollywood stars. And you want to talk about coincidences? Can you make that up? That really happened. So I started to investigate that. We're continuing to investigate the Amanda Winkowski case as we speak in Buffalo. There's a plethora of connections between Buffalo and Long Island and Suffolk County in the sex trafficking field and drug field. And I managed to get a hold of, I found the girl who was the so-called bottom girl. That's the girl who trains the sex workers for these big sex organizations. And she spoke to me. She's in the Midwest now. She got out of the business, but I spoke to her at length, and she remembered both of those girls, and she remembered training them for some famous actors as well. And so there is a connection, and it's all coincidence, but you decide whether you think it's a coincidence or not. Yeah. I can tell you it was to me.
Yeah. It's interesting that what you just shared with us is very, very interesting. I guess, when I know some places, some people believe there, especially in these types of cases, there's no such thing as a coincidence. It's not like, oh, I just happen to be in the area, that kind of thing. It's like, no, man, that's not a coincidence. You probably had something to do with this, or you saw something, you didn't want to say anything about it, so on and so forth. And I guess the what I was alluding to is coincidence with the things that are being found on, in her search engine, her art, the things she's been posting, the book that was found inside the house. Now, the other thing too is the book is so far what you kind of talked about is just that book. Were there other items in the in the house that were a bit more telling as well, in regards to just like, yeah, this stuff was just laying out here in front of everyone, the whole family. So how could you not know, kind of thing? Were there other items aside from a coffee table book?
I don't know, because
Okay.
the items that are germane to the case are typically items marked at the grand jury level for evidence, or are held back and to be used at trial. So they're not revealed until trial, typically, not revealed to the public, that is. And so I don't know about that. I did hear, though, that, and it was hearsay, but it was a good source, that there were all kinds of items under the bed, sex items that were used for, extraordinary sex, shall we call it? So that
Wow.
much I heard, but outside of that, no.
Okay. Well, I will say, I appreciate you coming on here, because I know that you have some things you got to go and
Sorry,
take care of and all that.
I'm sorry.
Sorry, say again.
I'm sorry I took all that time.
Oh, no. You didn't do anything wrong. You didn't do anything wrong. I appreciate you coming in here, clarifying a few things, and us just being able to hear you a little bit more of more beyond just the press conference, because I know a lot of us had a lot of questions revolving around it and just wanting to know a little bit more information. And I think I appreciate you willing to hear the questions, even the opposing views as well, in regards to this. So I really do appreciate you coming on, and yeah, I agree with you as well. I feel that there's going to be a lot more victims named, hopefully in the very near future, connected to allegedly Rex, and it's going to be wild when that happens.
I can only say this, and Pascal, I appreciate your statement to me that just now and to the public, and that is that this girl, she will deserve mercy, and the mercy of the judgment of other people, not to condemn her, but to try to help her if she changes her whole attitude and view and comes forward with what she knows. That certainly she would be deserving then, and she'll be in my prayers for that.
Mm-hmm.
But also the police department, I've noticed, and I've investigated now several of the serial killer cases around the country, and I've noticed that the police have a tendency to go after the big fish and then drop off on all the rest, because that they get it done. The public is satisfied, and everybody goes home and lives happily ever after, and a lot of things get left behind that are important things to be investigated, other people, other things. And I hope they don't do that here. I hope that they really spread their wings and start to investigate the kinds of things that I'm talking about right now, where there is real evidence of group behavior.
Yeah, I hope you're right. I hope that they keep their foot on the pedal, and keep blazing through. Thoroughly blazing through, but getting as much, if there are other victims, of course, connecting those victims to Rex Heuermann. Of course, you're right. Once they get the big fish, then they kind of sit back and go, okay, now we can downshift and just cruise. And it's like, no, there's so many other families that need more clarification. And if you can find out the information, on their last moments on this earth, that gives family closure, right? And it gives them just more transparency on what actually happened to their loved ones. So I hope you're right, that they just don't let off and just keep pushing forward. Again, I appreciate you coming on, John. It really does mean a lot. I know it. You had some very controversial comments and statements that you made last week, but I appreciate you clarifying a few of those things, talking about those things, and just, putting it out there for people to listen and for them to come to their own conclusion, right? Whether they agree with it or not. So I appreciate you coming on and just talking with us. It really does mean a lot.
Well, it means a lot to me to be on your show. It's a wonderful show. You're a really bright guy, and
thank you.
You're the man. You're a great guy. Like it.
Thank you. I look forward to having you back on again soon. All right.
Thank you.
Stay blessed, brother.
All right. You too.
Bye. Okay, guys. So what say you? Now you've heard from attorney John Ray. What say you? How do you feel about it? Listen, all I can say is there's nothing wrong with asking questions. That is the whole purpose when it comes to a situation that you may agree with or may not agree with. All you can do is ask the questions and see what comes of it. Maybe you change your mind. Maybe you don't change your mind. Okay. And you maybe stand firm in your own laurels. Hey, that's okay too. Because let's be real. The investigation at the end of the day are the investigators, and the investigation is the only thing that really holds the truth. At the end of the day, it's the proof, it's the evidence, and of course, it's the conviction, and so on, right? And it's the pathway towards justice. All we can do is ask the questions and see where it goes from there. Again, we have to remember, we still do have 6 victims that have been connected to Rex Heuermann. I have a feeling there's going to be a whole lot more. Now, whether or not the family knows or not, we don't know. I mean, yes, it's surprising. Like I said, it's shocking. It makes you want to clutch your pearls, makes you want to go, what the heck is going on here? What actually is happening inside that home? But there isn't anything wrong with asking the questions if the evidence is out here. Now, of course, this is circumstantial evidence. Again, circumstantial evidence. So again, it does not mean this person is guilty of anything, puts this person in the scene of the crime and whatnot. It does not. It doesn't. But it does make you wonder. And I think as us intelligent individuals out here in this world, it doesn't hurt to ask the questions. It just doesn't. So I say, hey, think independently. Okay? Think critically. And you come up with your own conclusions. Could the family know? Was Rex Heuermann really not living a double life? That's a question I leave up to you. Again, I want to say a big thank you to John Ray for coming on. This is someone who has been on this case and in this investigation for a very, very long time. His passion exudes. You can see he's a passionate man and he cares about getting justice nonetheless. Whether you think that the allegations are wild or, as controversial as you think that they may be or whatever, no matter what, this is somebody who is putting time and effort of his own free time to try to bring justice for these victims. And I will give him a lot of love and a lot of respect for that. But real quick, I want to say a big thank you to Joy, tired as a mother. Just saying Big Vomit wiped his phone. I'm done. And Lisa, thank you. Yes, I love John Ray. All the love and respect to John for coming on and sharing his thoughts with us. Again, I know that there's going to be different sides of the spectrum, different sides of the fence that are going to have their own personal opinions. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like I said, nothing wrong with that. Okay. Eventually, we'll find out the truth. Eventually. Only time will tell. We just got to wait a little bit. But at least he's asking questions. Anyway, guys, that is the show. I appreciate all y'all for being here. Really does mean a lot. Again, please do me a favor before you head out. Thank you so much for all the super chats and all the support, for even just showing up. Okay? For just showing up means a lot to me as well. So do me a favor, please hit that like button down below. Please and thank you. And for those of y'all who are showing up at the last minute and already just summing the show up without even actually watching the whole show, watch the whole show and then come to your own conclusion. I think that's fair. Don't you? So hit that like button down below. Don't forget to hit that reaction button if you're watching on other platforms. That would be greatly appreciated. Do not forget to crush that subscribe button if you're watching on YouTube, if you're watching on all these other platforms like Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, X/Twitter. That slipped my mind. Please be sure to hit that follow button over there. That would be amazing. Of course, you can support by hitting that join button down below on my YouTube channel, become a member, or you can join my Patreon, patreon.com/thepascalshow. All right, guys. Anyway, it is time to get going. I appreciate all y'all for being here. Be good to yourselves. Be good to one another. If I don't see you guys, have a great weekend. Do something positive. You deserve it. This is The Pascal Show. Bye.